What's up, Scooby Scream fam? Thank you so much for getting me to almost 800 subscribers on YouTube. This is insane for someone who never thought that they were going to have a YouTube channel. For it to have grown like this, for all of the comments, for all of the likes, for the subscribers, it just means so much to me. And I'm so excited to continue making content for you around Scream 7 with this exciting release coming up next year, as well as all of these Scooby and horror content, which I know y'all are here for. I know people are gonna ask for it. This is the shirt that I'm wearing. It is a Scream 2 shirt. In case you didn't know, you will come to know soon. Scream 2 is my favorite film in the franchise. I'm absolutely obsessed, and I will argue anytime, all the time, that Scream 2 is the best film in the franchise. But I have a ton to get to in a little time, so let's get right to it. First things first, I have to give a special shout out and thank you to Sistapam, who is a YouTuber on here. She covers all kinds of Scream stuff. She has incredible theories. She gave me a shout out in her latest video, which I highly encourage you to watch, where she talks about the potential Macher connection in Scream 7, what that could look like, and how it could tie back into Scream 5. So I highly suggest that you watch that, and please give her a follow. She is awesome. Definitely one of the best Scream YouTubers I have come across. And then the next thing that I want to mention is our queen, Neve Campbell. We have some exciting news for her. The show that she is on, the Netflix show Lincoln Lawyer, was just renewed for a season 4, and she is going to be a full-time character in this next season, being featured in every single episode as a series regular, whereas in the last season she was only on 2 episodes. So I'm definitely going to be checking out this season of the show. I'm so happy for her. Neve keeps winning. She has Scream 7 coming up. She has this, and I'm sure other projects too. I love that for her. The next thing that I wanted to mention is the Scream 7. I don't want to call it news because this is not official. I want to be very careful whenever I talk about rumors or speculation on here to make sure I'm upfront about that with you guys. But the information I'm about to tell you is speculation. It's not confirmed. But we did get some photos from an Instagram user called Atlanta_filming showing us what could be a possible newsroom office space where we could see a character or scenes be shot in Scream 7. You might remember me talking about a possible character named Robbie that we might see in Scream 7 who could serve as a sort of nemesis or antagonist towards our beloved Gail, who may be struggling with some issues related to her show in New York possibly being canceled, as well as still not, getting over what happened to Dewey. How could she? That Dewey was, in my opinion, her soulmate for life. And we know, or we believe, that this character, Robbie, who, if legit, we know that he is likely a local reporter working at this studio, and these photos could be his place of work. Now, I did speculate in the last video, based on some possible insider info that we have, that Gail could possibly be the cause of someone's death accidentally in this film, and this reporter could take advantage of that and use it to paint her as spiraling out of control or something like that. Total speculation on my part, but it could be interesting to keep an eye on and see Gail get a taste of her own medicine and really be the one being antagonized by a reporter, sort of the same way that she did to Sydney in the first and the beginning of the second Scream film. So that could be very interesting and something I'm going to keep an eye on. We also got this photo of a home or residential area neighborhood where this user says that Scream 7 was also filming. Maybe it's the opening, maybe it's another death chase scene, or Sydney's house, an introduction of some sorts. Who knows? It's exciting. I hope we get to see some more behind the scenes pics, although I also maybe don't, because it would be nice to go in blind. I'm always hoping that when we're speculating like this and we're sharing rumors, I'm always hoping that they turn out not to be true and that we are surprised by things. Because the same thing happened with sort of 5 for me, but really 6, where I went in knowing, I wish I knew less, let's just say that. But I feel like there were a lot more set photos and stuff and Easter eggs that were coming out before the 6th release. So the other thing I wanted to mention, in my last video, I talked about the possible Anna Camp Leslie Macher connection, or that Anna Camp could be playing Leslie Macher, the sister of Stu Macher, who could be one of our ghost faces in Scream 7. A lot of people took to saying that, oh no, that's ridiculous. Sydney definitely would recognize her, know who she was. Well, my friend Sistapam, who I told you to follow earlier, made a really good point during her video. We realized that Judy Hicks in Scream 4 and Sydney went to school together. They were in a school play together, but Sydney didn't remember Judy Hicks. She couldn't recognize her. So with all of the trauma that Sydney's been through, all of the loss, all of the grief, would we really expect her to remember someone like Leslie Macher, who maybe she never even really met or only saw pictures of? I think it's totally in the realm of possibility that Sydney would not know what Leslie looks like. The one other thing that I wanted to point out is I remember one big criticism of Scream 2 being, how could Gail not have recognized Debbie Salt or Mrs. Loomis, given that she had written the book and was covering the story of the Woodsboro murders? Wouldn't she have looked into the parents of both of the killers and known what they looked like? But you know, not necessarily, especially because of social media and whatnot. I think you can make that same argument today, though, with Anna Camp being Leslie Macher. Wouldn't, if Sydney doesn't recognize her, then wouldn't Gail recognize Stu Macher's sister through all of the books she's written, all of the coverage and her obsession with the Woodsboro murders? Don't you think that she would recognize Leslie and be able to say, hey, that is definitely Stu Macher's sister? I mean, maybe not, but I seem to think that Gail knows her shit and would recognize that that was Leslie. But maybe they'll handle it some way where we don't really see Leslie and Gail interact or see each other, sort of what they did with Debbie Salt and Sydney, how they never saw each other. I also want to add that all of the speculation around Anna Camp's character being Leslie Macher could totally be false. We don't even know whatsoever that Stu, Leslie Macher, or any of the Macher family is going to play a role in Scream 7. They may not. It's just speculation, and it does make sense because we've had, you know, Debbie Salt, Mrs. Loomis come into the picture. We had Detective Bailey, who was the father of Richie. We haven't really explored Stu Macher's side of the family, which is why I think because of the Vince connection in Scream 5, which my friend Sistapam also has some really interesting theories about, with that Vince connection and him being taken out, and Anna Camp's character being Leslie Macher, his mother, that gives her some more incentive to be the killer in the film, along with the fact that maybe over time she's become sort of like obsessed or enamored with Sydney's story and all of the grief and devastation that maybe she felt for losing her brother and the grief that the family has felt. Maybe she's channeled that into obsession, and she is obsessed with the idea of taking on or donning the ghost-faced costume the same way that Stu, her brother, did, except she would actually finish the job this time. I've also said that Leslie Macher doesn't have to be the killer necessarily. It could be another member of the Macher family who maybe is connected to, or who maybe is working with Leslie, but Leslie's not actually the killer. Like, it could be a sort of cult of the Macher family, which could be interesting. We know that one of the early drafts of Scream 3 before Kevin Williamson parted the project and left, and Aaron Kruger wrote it. We do know that one of Kevin Williamson's ideas was to have a cult led by Stu Macher of people that he was running to carry out Ghostface killings. So what if it was the Macher family and Stu is dead? Because as much as it would be fun to see Matthew Lillard come back as Stu, I do think that all of these years later, it's pretty difficult for me to think that Matthew Lillard would be returning to play Stu. So I do think he's dead, but I think a cult of, the Macher family, maybe pulling in some other radical people who might have been on the Stab, subreddit that Amber and Richie were on. I think that could be an interesting angle to pursue as well that I wouldn't rule out. Also, it doesn't have to be the Macher family at all. Why couldn't it be Casey Becker's family? Why couldn't it be Derek's family, Hallie's family, Scream 2? There are all of these, I feel like, people who have been collateral damage, not at the fault of Sydney, because nothing is her fault, but who have been collateral damage at the hands of all of these ghost faces who have gone after Sydney and have taken out her friends. We haven't really explored those family members' experiences after. And, I do think it's fair to think that some of them might have snapped and, could have become obsessed with Sydney and taking her down and, airing their grievances in that really unhealthy and ridiculous way. Anyway, though, I want to also mention that one interesting way that I think Anna Camp's or Leslie Macher's character could potentially be orchestrating the attacks is we know that Fallbrook, or at least we think, I want to say we think because we don't know anything, we think that there will be a mental hospital in Scream 7 called Fallbrook Mental Hospital, and there is potentially a patient from that hospital who could be potentially our opening killer or killers, because there could be more than one. Now, what if Anna Camp's character, Leslie Macher, or somebody else, because it doesn't have to be Leslie or even a Macher, what if she is a nurse in the Fallbrook area hospital system and she was able to pick up a shift at this mental hospital, and she is the one who is able to get these patients out to carry out these attacks? Maybe she's been plotting with them to do this for a while. Who knows? She could be abusing her position. These are all of the kinds of interesting things that, I'm thinking of. And if you're wondering what I'm talking about with this Fallbrook Mental Hospital and the patients, I encourage you to go back and watch my last video, which covers that. So I do think that could be one way for Anna Camp's character, who may or may not be Leslie Macher and is likely a friend of Sydney Prescott's. That could be one way that she might be puppeteering the ghost faces. I think that just about covers all of the news that I wanted to get into before we get to the main topic at hand, which is my prediction for the Scream 7 opening. Now, I have 4 openings in mind that I am fairly confident one of these will be more or less the opening that we get. So this would be the most basic opening, but I still think it could be impactful. McKenna Grace is arguably the biggest name to come out of the fresh faces that we're going to be getting in Scream 7. So I do think the most basic ghost face attack could be an attack against McKenna Grace, who could be home alone, watching a movie, doing whatever. And it's your typical ghost face attack with McKenna Grace, who could be a friend of Isabel May's character, she's playing Sydney Prescott's daughter. You could have McKenna Grace's character be killed. Maybe Ghostface is sending videos or FaceTiming this kill to Sydney's daughter and maybe showing Sydney, and they're watching in horror. Maybe Sydney even, tries to call the cops, tries to get over to the house, but can't in time. Now, even more interesting, and I would love to see them go this direction, is what if Isabel May and Sydney's daughter are having a sleepover and it's sort of isolated in the middle of nowhere, so to speak, like Casey Becker's in the first Scream. And what if Sydney's daughter, Isabel May's character, has to endure and experience a ghost face attack, a real one. Maybe she thinks it's a prank at first with McKenna Grace's character, and they're the friends, they're together, they think it's a prank. It becomes very real. Sydney is frantically on the phone with her, FaceTiming. Maybe the killer or killers are FaceTiming Sydney to show her that they are attacking her daughter. Maybe McKenna Grace and Sydney's daughter don't even know that they're being watched, and Sydney is getting a FaceTime or video showing that her daughter is about to face the same sort of attack that she has faced for all of the years of her life. I just think that could be so powerful. Now, I don't think Sydney's daughter would die, but I do think McKenna Grace, her character, would die, and maybe Sydney gets there in time to take out Ghostface or Ghostface runs away. But I think what would be really unique is if Sidney actually took down Ghostface and we got our first ever Sidney unmasking a Ghostface, pulling the actual mask off, us seeing who it is, and it would likely be someone we don't know, but someone that Anna Camp's character, or whoever else the other Ghostfacer handler of the Ghostfaces is, would be controlling. So we would have an unmasking of a Ghostface at the beginning of the film at the hands of Sidney, and not just someone like Jason, who's not really going to have any other role in the rest of the film. This Ghostface would be one that was being controlled by whoever is above them in this hierarchy or in this cult. I think that would be super interesting. Obviously, Sidney and her daughter it would be super traumatizing. It would unlock Sidney's past. I'm sure it would make Sidney even more overprotective of Isabel May's character in this film, which would be an interesting dynamic to explore. Especially since we saw how Sidney was already pretty protective over Jill, who ended up being a killer. So I can only imagine how overprotective she would be with her own daughter. I would not let my daughter out of the room. And it's been rumored that there could be scenes of Isabel May's character sneaking out of the house, or at least trying to get out, which would be awful for Sidney to discover that her daughter was not in the house. And God forbid she's sneaking out to a boyfriend who could be one of our ghost faces, although I don't think that they would go that route in this film, but we'll just have to see. Another possible opening that I have is Sidney, Mark Evans, and their kids. I think it will be Isabel May's character and then two younger kids, them possibly having a ghost face attack while they're all home together, and us maybe losing Mark's character and Sidney still unmasking the ghost face. I'm leaning further and further away from this being the opening, and I want to tell you a big reason why. I think one of the main reasons why I don't really see Sidney and her family being the opening is because I do think we need to have a couple of scenes outside of the opening, getting to know Mark Evans, getting to know his and Sidney's relationship, his relationship with the kids, showing he's a very loving, supportive father. He is Sidney's support system. He makes her laugh. He makes her so happy. I feel like we need that because I do think that before the end of Act 1, or maybe at the beginning of Act 2, we will be losing Mark, and it will be crushing and devastating because we'll see how much he means to Sidney and how heartbreaking it is for her to have lost him and to be having to see her kids experience what she had to go through growing up without one of their parents, the way that she had to go on without her mom, and just seeing how that impacts the kids and them at school and in the town. I just think there's something so raw and visceral there to explore, and it will only be more impactful if we get at least some scenes with Mark. Like I've said in the past, I don't want him to be the total focus of the film, but I do think in order for us to reach the full potential of connecting with Sidney's grief and the pain that she feels for her family, we need to spend some time with Mark and see just how good of a father he is. And then lastly, I'm going to try to wrap it up because I know I'm going long here and I'm very tired. But my last theory is that we will get Mindy Meeks Martin, Chad Meeks Martin, and potentially Martha Meeks in an opening where we will be losing either one of the twins and Martha and the other one survives, or potentially even Martha and one of the twins. It could be a double kill opening and one other person survives. But I do think in every scenario, it's likely that Sidney somehow finds out while it's happening or shortly after, and maybe even tries to intervene in this one if they are living in close enough proximity to her. That's the other thing that we have to think of. Is how do the Meeks twins come into play if they are not the opening kill? Maybe they hear about the killings or killing and then want to go be near Sidney. But I think it's a good opportunity if they are the opening kill to have either Sidney go to them or more likely them go to Sidney to all be together. But I do think that one really interesting element would be in all of these to have a ghost face or both ghost faces recording and sending to Sydney or FaceTiming her to make her have to realize what is going on and that it is real. I still seem to think that we are more likely to lose Chad in Scream 7 than we are to lose Mindy, simply because I think Chad really doesn't have any plot armor to move forward, and I think that he was very lucky to have survived Scream 5 and especially Scream 6, which he never should have survived. One other interesting theory is maybe Mindy and Chad, or just Mindy babysitting Sydney's kids, her younger kids, while the daughter is at a sleepover and Sydney and Mark are out at dinner, and then our opening being with Mindy and the kids, or with Chad and Mindy and the kids, and then them being attacked, and Mark and Sydney having to rush back to the house. I don't think we've never had an opening scene with babysitters or a babysitter, and I feel like that could just be very interesting, like a callback to When a Stranger Calls sort of thing. I would love to see that. I think it would be super interesting, super suspenseful. I really want to see a chase scene or chase scenes in these openings somehow, and I would love to see Sydney be involved in them, because when have we ever seen Sydney in an opening of a Scream movie? I don't know how. I don't think I would want her to be the focus, because I think she will come into play sort of toward the end to try to save whoever's still alive and unmask Ghostface. But I do think it's new uncharted territory to explore, and I could see Kevin Williamson doing it. But anyway, thank you so much for all of the support. Let's get to 1K subscribers. It would be incredible to do it in the next couple of days. I have more content on the way. I have so many ideas. I know there's going to be new Scream 7 news. I think we're going to get a couple more casting announcements, including the rumored nemesis or antagonist toward Gale that has been mentioned, Robbie, the local reporter. I would guess that we will, get that casting announcement soon, and I'd love to see it be a bigger name, but we shall see. Anyway, I am wrapping the video up here. Let me know your thoughts. Like, comment, share, subscribe, follow me on other socials. I am at Scooby Scream on X, as well as Instagram on Scooby Scream, and on TikTok at Jake Lub. Love y'all. Cut it, Casper. That's a wrap.